So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Warhammer 40k, so let's start the series. The air was a soup of rust, industrial lubricant, and the cloying, sweet scent of decay. It scraped down Naruto's throat like broken glass with every ragged breath. His lungs burned, a searing pain that was almost a relief, because it meant he was still alive. The last thing he remembered was the seal, a frantic, desperate flare of light from his stomach as a strange, alien energy had lashed out from a rift in space he'd been trying to close. Then nothing. Now there was this. He was pressed flat against a cold iron walkway, the metal slick with condensation and something darker, something that smelled coppery. Above him, a sky that wasn't a sky, a vaulted ceiling of corrugated iron miles high, lost in a perpetual, greasy smog lit from below by the hellish orange glow of industrial furnaces. The thunder of machinery was a constant, grinding roar that vibrated in his bones. Shouts, sharp and guttural, cut through the din lost fire. He'd learned that term the hard way, less than an hour ago, when the first patrol had seen him materialize in a flash of gold. The energy beams had seared past him, leaving scorch marks on the ancient stonework. He'd run then, instinct screaming, and he'd been running or hiding ever since. Now they'd found him again. A squad of 5 soldiers in drab, ill-fitting flak armor clattered onto the far end of the walkway, their weapons, the boxy lost guns, snapping up. Their faces were pale, hollow-eyed, but their fear was being overridden by a zealous duty. Behind them, a figure in a dark leather coat and a stern, augmetic eye stalked forward, a crackling power maul held loosely in one hand. "Which?" the figure, an enforcer, bellowed, his voice amplified by a vox grill in his throat. "Your taint has been registered. Surrender to the Emperor's justice." Naruto didn't understand the words, not fully, but the intent was clear. His hand instinctively went to his stomach, where a faint, golden light still pulsed weakly under his tattered orange and black jacket. The chakra cloak. It had flared to life the moment he'd arrived, reacting to the sheer malevolent pressure of this place. To them, it was a beacon of heresy. "I'm not a witch," he shouted back, his voice hoarse. "I'm a ninja. I just want to find a way home." His words were met with a burst of lost fire. The air sizzled. Naruto moved, a blur of motion that was far beyond the humans aiming at him. He flowed around the beams, a whirlwind of orange, and in 2 heartbeats was among them. His fists and feet moved with a precision born of decades of combat. The first soldier went down with a choked gasp as a gentle palm strike to the temple sent him into unconsciousness. The second had his lost gun batted aside before a kick to the back of his knee dropped him. The enforcer swung his power maul, the weapon humming with lethal energy. Naruto ducked under the wild swing, pivoted on his heel, and slammed the heel of his palm into the man's solar plexus, folding him like paper. It was over in seconds. 5 soldiers and their leader lay groaning on the iron grill. Naruto stood over them, breathing heavily, his chakra cloak flickering around him like a living flame. He didn't want to hurt them. They were just scared. A low, guttural chuckle echoed from the shadows deeper in the structure. It wasn't a human sound. It was wet, and it seemed to slither inside his skull. "Oh, pretty little thing. Such a bright, shiny soul in all this glorious decay." From the darkness, shapes emerged. They weren't soldiers. They moved with an unnatural, jerky grace. Their skin was covered in crude tattoos of 8-pointed stars, their eyes were pits of feverish madness, and their clothes were a mishmash of cultist robes and scavenged Imperial Guard armor. At their head loped a creature that was no longer entirely human. Its arms were too long, its skin the color of tallow, and horns of twisted bone curled from its scalp. A faint, greenish miasma clung to it. The Chaos Spawn, for that was what it was, pointed a clawed hand at Naruto. "The gods sent you a gift. A soul of pure, untouched energy. Can you taste it, brothers? So bright. It will scream so beautifully as it is unmade." The cultist shrieked a prayer to powers Naruto couldn't comprehend and charged. This was different. These weren't scared soldiers. These were madmen who radiated a wrongness that made the 9 tails chakra inside him stir with a sense of primal disgust. They didn't fight with tactics. They fought with a savage, gleeful abandon, rusty blades and auto guns eager to spill blood. Naruto met them head-on. A cultist lunged with a knife, and he sidestepped, catching the man's wrist and using his momentum to hurl him into 2 of his comrades. Another swung a length of pipe, and Naruto caught it, the metal groaning in his grip. He yanked it free and used it to parry a wild shot from an auto pistol. The bullet sparked off the pipe and the walkway. But the spawn was faster. It flowed through the melee, its 2 long arms snaking out to claw at Naruto's face. He ducked, but the claws raked across his chakra cloak, and for the first time, he felt it, a psychic cold, a sense of violation that made him want to vomit. The energy of this creature was like the antithesis of nature, of life itself. He channeled chakra to his fist, reinforcing it. As the spawn came at him again, mouth agape to reveal rows of needle teeth, Naruto didn't dodge. He stepped into the attack, his fist connecting with the creature's chest in a chakra-infused blow that should have pulverized rock. The spawn was hurled backwards, a screech of pure rage tearing from its throat. But it wasn't destroyed. It got up, its chest caved in but already beginning to reknit with a sickening, wet sound. "Pain!" it shrieked, its eyes blazing with insane delight. "It gives pain! Feed us, little soul!" This was wrong. This whole universe was wrong. He couldn't just knock these things out. They were driven by something far beyond mere madness. He needed to end this. He pulled on the chakra of the Nine Tails, letting the crimson flux of QB's power mingle with his own brilliant gold. His whisker marks darkened, his eyes flashed into slits, and the golden cloak was shot through with veins of angry red. The pressure he exerted was immense, a physical force that pushed the remaining cultists back a step. The spawn, however, laughed. "Yes! More! The gods hunger for that rage!" Before he could act, a new sound cut through the chaos. A deep, percussive thump-thump-thump that vibrated in the air. The cultists closest to the edge of the walkway suddenly dissolved into red mist as a stream of heavy bolter fire tore through them. The spawn screeched and dodged, its body contorting in impossible ways as heavy caliber rounds chewed up the iron where it had been standing. Naruto looked towards the source. Striding through a massive doorway that led deeper into the hive were figures that defied belief. They were giants, easily 8 feet tall, clad in armor of gleaming blue ceramite decorated with gold trim. They moved with a terrifying, machine-like unity, their helmets depicting stern, unyielding faces. One of them carried the massive, smoking weapon that had just fired. At their head was a figure even more imposing, his armor more ornate, a power sword held casually in one hand. A robed figure walked beside him, his armor adorned with parchment and seals, a force staff crackling with psychic energy. His helmet was horned, and his gaze, even from this distance, seemed to pierce right through Naruto. The Ultramarines had arrived. The remaining cultists, faced with these demigods of the Imperium, didn't flee. Instead, they screamed their prayers to the dark gods with renewed fervor and charged the Space Marines. It was butchery. The blue-armored warriors moved with a cold, brutal efficiency that made Naruto's own recent skirmish look like child's play. Bolters barked, chains words roared, and within 30 seconds, the walkway was painted with the remains of the cult. The Space Marine with the ornate armor and power sword, a captain by the look of him, pointed his blade directly at Naruto. The giant warrior's voice, when it came, was a booming, amplified command. "Heretic! Your presence has drawn the Neverborn. You will be purged." The robed psyker, Chief Librarian Tigurius, raised a hand, his gaze locked onto Naruto. A wave of psychic force, invisible but undeniable, washed over Naruto. It felt like a million needles trying to probe his mind, his soul. He felt the Nine Tails recoil, a deep, ancient snarl of defiance. Naruto gritted his teeth, and his own will, honed by years of fighting the fox's influence, and then befriending it, slammed shut like a gate. He glared back at the librarian, his chakra flaring brighter in defiance. Tigurius's eyes widened slightly behind his helmet. He leaned towards the captain, his voice a low murmur that Naruto's enhanced senses just caught. "Captain Severus, the energy is not of the warp. It is something else. It reacted to my probe with rejection, not corruption. And it burned the spawn with its touch." "It matters not what it is, librarian," Captain Severus growled, his bolter still leveled at Naruto's chest. "It is unknown. It is unsanctioned. It is a threat. By the decree of the God Emperor, it must be destroyed." Naruto stood his ground, the bodies of the madmen and the unconscious soldiers at his feet. He was surrounded by superhuman warriors who wanted him dead, and an entire city-sized nightmare of industry and despair stretched out in every direction. He had no idea where he was, no idea how to get home. The soldiers he'd fought were just doing their job. The cultists were monsters. And these Ultramarines were something else entirely. They were judgment given form. He slowly raised his hands, palms open, the golden glow of his chakra cloak dimming slightly but not vanishing. He looked past the bolter aimed at his face, past the stern helmet of the captain, and met the gaze of the librarian. He didn't speak their language, but he let his expression do the talking. It was the same look he'd given so many enemies, so many doubters, in his own world. It was the look of someone who would not back down, but who was not looking for a fight. The captain's finger tightened on the trigger. The moment stretched, taut as a wire. The grinding roar of the hive city filled the silence, a soundtrack to a universe that had no place for hope. And in that frozen second, trapped between the brutal order of the Imperium and the screaming chaos it fought, Naruto Uzumaki's new life began. The cell was a cube of rusted iron, 10 feet in each direction. A single lumen strip in the ceiling cast a sickly greenish light, illuminating the grime and the bolter-scarred walls. Naruto sat in the center, legs crossed, eyes closed. His chakra cloak was banked, a faint, almost imperceptible glow beneath his skin. He wasn't asleep. He was meditating, reaching out with his senses, trying to understand this world's version of nature chakra. There was none. The planet itself felt dead. No life sap in the metal, no spirit in the fumes. It was a tomb world of industry. He'd been here for 3 days, as far as he could tell. They'd stripped him of his jacket, his headband, his sandals. They'd poked him with strange instruments that made his skin tingle. They'd asked questions in a language he didn't understand, their voices a mixture of fear and disgust. Through it all, he'd remained silent, observing. He'd learned a few words. The most common one, spat at him like a curse, was mutant. Another was witch. And the one spoken with the most reverent fear was inquisitor. Today, he was getting his first visit from one. The cell door groaned open, hydraulic pistons hissing. 2 massive figures in blue armor filled the doorway, his silent, ever-present ultramarine guards. Between them strode a man who was physically unremarkable. He was of average height, with sharp, intelligent features and pale eyes that held the cold, dead calm of a frozen lake. He wore simple but high-quality black robes, a large ornate eye pinned at his throat. This was Inquisitor Forlick of the Ordo Hereticus. He didn't enter the cell. He stood in the doorway, studying Naruto as one might study a venomous insect pinned to a board. "It doesn't eat," one of the ultramarines rumbled, his voice a deep thrum. "It hasn't slept. It just sits there." The Inquisitor tilted his head. "So I've read in the reports. Fascinating. The astropathic message from Lord Tigurius was unprecedented. He claims the creature's soul light is of a pure, non-warp origin. He counsels caution and observation." Forlick's thin lips curled into a humorless smile. "I counsel a bolt shell to the brain. But my master in the Ordo is intrigued, so we talk." He stepped forward, and the door groaned shut behind him, leaving him alone with Naruto. The Inquisitor was either very brave or very foolish. Naruto opened his eyes and looked up at him. "Can you understand me?" Forlick asked, his Gothic slow and deliberate. "We've been pumping low-level hypnolingual frequencies into yourself for 3 days. Your brain should have started to piece it together." Naruto stared at him for a long moment. The words were still strange, a jumble of harsh consonants and guttural vowels. But something was different. They were starting to settle, to form shapes in his mind. He'd always been quick with languages. His world had dozens of them. He tried, his voice cracking from disuse. "Understand, little." A flicker of genuine surprise crossed Forlick's face. "Remarkable. Perhaps there's more to you than a pretty light show." He crouched, bringing himself to Naruto's eye level. "Then let's begin. Who are you? Where do you come from?" Naruto met his gaze. "Naruto Uzumaki. I am a ninja. From a village. Konoha. In the land of fire." He saw no recognition in the man's eyes, only a cold, analytical interest. "Ninja. Assassin, then. A warrior from another world. A parallel reality, perhaps. The warp touches infinite possibilities." Forlick stroked his chin. "And this chakra of yours. This is the power you use?" "Yes." "And it is not psychic? You do not draw it from the immaterium? From the realm of chaos?" Naruto frowned. He had no idea what the immaterial realm was. Chakra is from inside. From spirit and body. From life. It is natural. Forlick stared at him for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he laughed. It was a short, sharp, utterly humorless sound. "Natural? Boy, there is nothing natural in this galaxy. There is only the Emperor's light, and the blasphemous darkness of the warp that seeks to devour it. Your natural energy is an unknown. The unknown is heresy." He stood up abruptly. "Chief Librarian Tigurius believes you could be a weapon. A new kind of weapon against the archenemy. His word carries weight, even with me. So, here is your choice, Naruto Uzumaki." He began to pace the small cell. "You will be processed. You will be given a servitor collar that will deliver a fatal neuroshock if you attempt to use your powers without authorization. You will be assigned to a black ship, taken to Terra, and handed over to the Adeptus Astra Telepathica for study. You will live out your days in a cell, poked and prodded until you die or go mad." Naruto's jaw tightened. "And the other choice?" Forlick stopped pacing and looked at him, a predatory glint in his eyes. "You prove your worth. The world below, High Primus, is a festering sore. The Administratum estimates its population at 50 billion souls. The Ecclesiarchy claims 90% worship the God Emperor. My intelligence suggests that a full third secretly pay homage to the ruinous powers. Cults fester in the underhive like maggots in a corpse. They are growing bolder. They recently summoned that thing you fought. A spawn. The presence of a demon host, no matter how minor, in a hive city is a failure of the Imperium. It must be answered." He pointed a finger at Naruto. "You will go down there. You will be my weapon. You will hunt the cults, find their leaders, and you will exterminate them. In return, we will provide you with food, shelter, and the continued courtesy of not having your soul scoured from your body by a choir of 1,000 psychers. Succeed, and perhaps, in a century or two, you might earn a degree of freedom. Fail, and you die in the dark, and no one will ever know your name. Naruto stared at the Inquisitor. This was the choice? Become a killer for a regime that saw him as a monster, or be a lab rat for the rest of his life. In his world, he'd fought to protect people, to bridge gaps, to bring understanding. Here, understanding was a weakness. Compassion was a sin. He thought of the terrified faces of the soldiers he'd knocked out. He thought of the fanatical joy in the eyes of the cultists. He thought of the civilians he'd glimpsed in his brief flight through the hive, hollow, starving, broken things who shuffled through the smog with no hope in their eyes. He couldn't save them by rotting in a cell. He couldn't protect anyone from a laboratory on Terra. Maybe down there, in the darkness, he could make a difference. A small one. For a few people. He looked back at the Inquisitor, and his blue eyes, for a moment, held the weight of a decision that went far beyond his own survival. I'll do it, he said, his voice quiet but firm. But not for you. I'll do it for them. For the people down there. Forlich's cold mask slipped for just a second, revealing a flicker of something, amusement, perhaps, or contempt for such naive idealism. How quaint. The heretic with a conscience. Suit yourself? Just remember, little ninja, down there, your conscience will get you killed far faster than any cultist's blade. He turned and hammered on the door. Guards! Prepare the subject for hive descent. And someone get him some proper clothes. He looks ridiculous. As the door groaned open, Naruto was left alone with his thoughts. He'd made his choice. He was going into the belly of the beast, not as a hero, but as a tool of a system he was only beginning to comprehend. The Golden Guardian, he thought with a grim, internal smile. It had a nice ring to it. But first, he had to survive. The descent into Hive Primus was a journey into hell. Naruto rode in a groaning cargo lift, a massive iron cage that took hours to grind its way down through the city's strata. With every level, the light from the omnipresent smog fires above dimmed, replaced by the sickly glow of malfunctioning lumen strips and the bioluminescence of strange, pale fungi that grew in the damp. The air grew thicker, heavier, fouler. The thunder of industry was replaced by an oppressive silence, broken only by the drip of polluted water and the skittering of unseen things. His escort was a single figure, a grizzled veteran of the Imperial Guard named Sergeant Kalen. He was a squat, powerful man with a cybernetic left arm and a face that looked like it had been carved from old leather. He carried a lost gun with the casual ease of a man who'd slept with it for decades. He hadn't spoken a word to Naruto since they'd left the surface, just watched him with a mixture of suspicion and weary resignation. The lift finally shuddered to a halt. The doors screeched open onto a world of perpetual twilight. They stood on a platform overlooking a vast, cavernous space. Rusty hab units were stacked precariously on top of each other, climbing the curved walls of the hive like the cells of a giant, metallic termite mound. Bridges of corroded iron spanned the chasm between them. At the bottom, far below, a river of sluggish, glowing green sludge oozed through the darkness. The air was thick with the smell of decay, industrial waste, and unwashed humanity. Welcome to the Undershive, boy, Kalen grunted, his voice flat. 60 million souls live in this section alone. The Imperium doesn't know they exist. The Administratum census stopped 10 levels up. Down here, there is no law but what you make, and no god but the one that answers first. He led Naruto down a series of rickety ladders and walkways deeper into the maze. They passed groups of people, if they could be called that. They were gaunt, pale things with hollow eyes and sunken cheeks, dressed in rags. They flinched at the sight of Kalen's lost gun and scrambled away, disappearing into the shadows. Naruto's heart ached for them. They looked like the civilians from his world after a devastating attack, but this wasn't the aftermath of a battle. This was just Tuesday. Kalen brought him to a small, fortified hab unit, its door a sheet of plasteel reclaimed from some wrecked vehicle. Inside was a single room with a cot, a table, and a flickering lamp. A battered voxcaster sat on the table. This is your base, Kalen said. Your only contact with the surface is through me. I'll be your handler. You get information, you follow it, you kill the targets, you report back. You don't ask questions. You don't make friends. He fixed Naruto with a hard stare. The people down here aren't people anymore. They're resources for the cults. Fodder for demons. You show them kindness, they'll sell you out for a cup of clean water. Remember that. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. The Inquisition has ears everywhere, boy. Even down here. Try to run, and they'll find you. Try to hide, and the cults will find you first. You're a tool. A very shiny, very strange-looking tool. Don't forget it. He left, the door slamming shut behind him. Naruto stood in the center of the room, listening to the silence. It was a different kind of silence than in his cell. This one was alive, pregnant with the sounds of a suffering world, a distant, hacking cough, the wail of a child, the low, rhythmic chanting from somewhere far off that made his skin crawl. He ignored Kalen's advice. On the second day, he went out. He didn't hunt cultists. He wandered. He learned the labyrinthine passages of his section of the underhive. He found a place where a pipe leaked a thin trickle of relatively clean water and collected some in a discarded can. He found a family of 5 huddled in a niche behind a broken-down industrial processor, a mother, a father, and 3 skeletal children. They cowered when they saw him, their eyes wide with terror. He placed the can of water near them and backed away, his hands raised. He did this every day for a week. He brought food when he could find it, edible fungi, a rat-like creature he managed to catch. He never spoke, just left the offerings and left. On the 5th day, the father, a man named Gent, spoke to him. "Why?" he rasped, his voice a whisper. "Why do you help us? Are you with the corpse god's men?" Naruto shook his head. "No. I'm nobody." He pointed to the children, who were greedily drinking the water he'd brought. "They need help." Gent stared at him, tears welling in his sunken eyes. "There is no help here, stranger. Only the end." Naruto's first mission came on the 8th day. Kalen appeared at his door, his face grim. A lead. A gathering. 3 levels down, in an old Prometheum refinery. A cult leader called the Voice is preaching to his flock. We have reason to believe he's planning a major summoning. You go in, you silence him, you get out. No witnesses. Naruto nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He simply moved. The refinery was a cathedral of rusted metal and shattered glass. Naruto slipped through the shadows, a ghost in the gloom. He found them in the main chamber, gathered around a fire that burned with an unnatural, greenish flame. 100 of them, maybe more, their faces upturned towards a figure on a makeshift pulpit. The Voice. He was a thin man with a shaven head, his eyes burning with the same green fire as the pyre. He was preaching in a language Naruto didn't know, but the words dripped with malice and promise. As Naruto watched, the ritual began. The cultists produced a man, a struggling, terrified figure, Gent. They dragged him towards the fire. The Voice raised his arms, and the green flame roared, a shape beginning to form within it. The air grew cold, thick with the psychic pressure Naruto had felt with the spawn. He didn't think. He moved. He burst from the shadows, a golden blur. A half-dozen cultists went flying before they even knew he was there. He landed between Gent and the fire, his chakra cloak flaring to life, casting the chamber in brilliant gold. The cultists recoiled, shielding their eyes. The demon in the fire, a lesser thing of claws and fangs, just beginning to coalesce, screamed as the golden light touched it. It sounded like a million voices shrieking in agony. The Voice stared at him, his eyes wide with disbelief. What trick is this? What power dares defy the changer of ways? Naruto didn't answer. He looked at the cult leader, at the terrified man behind him, at the mass of brainwashed, starving humanity that made up his congregation. He remembered what Kalen had said. They're not people anymore. He was wrong. He pointed at Gent. Go, he said quietly. The man scrambled to his feet and fled into the darkness. Then Naruto turned to the Voice. He didn't draw on the 9 tails. He didn't need to. He simply reached out with his will, with the pure, natural energy of his chakra, and pushed. It wasn't an attack. It was an assertion. It was the force of a soul that had faced down demon lords and talked them into being his friends, pushing back against something that was its antithesis. The green fire guttered and died. The half-formed demon dissolved with a final, agonized wail. The cultists, suddenly released from the psychic thrall, looked around in dazed confusion, their weapons hanging limply in their hands. The Voice stumbled back, his power broken. Naruto walked towards him, his golden light illuminating the man's terrified face. This isn't the way, he said, his voice calm but carrying in the sudden silence. This pain, this fear, it doesn't give you power. It just makes more pain. There has to be another way. He didn't kill the Voice. He knocked him unconscious with a gentle tap to the head. He then turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving 100 confused, frightened, but suddenly free people in his wake. An hour later he was back in his hab, sitting on his cot, staring at his hands. He'd stopped a summoning. He'd saved a man. He'd proven Kalen wrong. But as the sounds of the underhive pressed in around him, he knew this was just one tiny victory in an endless, grinding war. The weight of 60 million souls was still there, pressing down on him. And somewhere in the darkness, he knew, the Voice was just one of many. The Golden Guardian had made his first stand. But the night was far from over. Word spread through the underhive like wildfire through a dry forest. Not in any official way, there were no news sheets or voxcasters down here, but in whispers passed between scavengers, in the wide-eyed stares of children, in the furtive glances of the desperate. A ghost. A golden light. A demon slayer who didn't kill. The stories grew with each telling. Some said he was an angel of the god emperor, sent to save the worthy. Others, more cynical, whispered he was a new kind of cultist, luring people to their doom with false hope. The cults themselves, however, knew the truth. A new power had entered their domain, and it was hunting them. Naruto continued his quiet war. He'd intercept supply runs of stolen food meant for a cult's inner circle and redirect them to a starving hab block. He'd sabotage a ritual by simply appearing, his chakra cloak disrupting the psychic currents so the would-be summoners were left with nothing but a headache and a lingering sense of anticlimax. He never killed if he could help it, preferring to knock cultists unconscious or simply scare them straight. Some, he found, were just people who had joined out of desperation, lured by promises of food and purpose. To those, he offered a different kind of promise, a chance to help their neighbors instead of sacrificing them. Sergeant Kalen was not happy. "You're supposed to be an exterminator, not a bloody social worker," he snarled during one of their infrequent meetings. "You let a cult leader live. You let 100 potential heretics walk free. The Inquisitor is not pleased. He's talking about sending in a full squad of stormtroopers to cleanse the sector you've been working. That means flommers. That means everyone dies, men, women, children, cultists or not. That's how the Imperium solves problems, boy. You either get with the program, or you become part of the problem." Naruto listened, his face impassive. "If he sends them, I'll stop them," he said quietly. It wasn't a threat. It was a simple statement of fact. Kalen stared at him, his weathered face a mask of disbelief. "You're insane. You'd fight the Imperium? For these rats?" "They're people," Naruto said. "And they deserve a chance." Kalen left, shaking his head, muttering about witches and madness. Naruto knew he was running out of time. The Inquisition's patience was a finite resource, and he was spending it fast. He needed to do something bigger. Something that would prove his method could work on a larger scale. The opportunity came a week later, in the form of a girl. She was maybe 12, with huge, terrified eyes and a filthy face. She appeared at his door one night, trembling, and spoke in a rushed, frightened whisper. The voice, "He's back. He's got my brother. They're in the sump pumps. They're going to do it again, the big fire. Please, please, Golden Man. Help." Naruto was on his feet in an instant. "Show me." The sump pumps were a nightmare of giant, rusted machinery that groaned and clanked in the darkness, perpetually struggling to push the toxic sludge of the underhive to some unknown processing facility. The air was thick with methane and the smell of decay. The girl led him through a maze of catwalks and pumping stations until they came to a vast, circular chamber. At its center was a pool of the glowing green sludge, and in the middle of the pool, on a platform of corroded iron, stood the voice. He was changed. His eyes were pits of green fire, and his skin had taken on a waxy, pale sheen. He was no longer just a heretic preacher, he was a vessel. Around him, 100 cultists chanted, their voices rising and falling in a hypnotic rhythm. On the platform with him, bound and gagged, was a young boy, the girl's brother. As Naruto watched, the pool of sludge began to churn. Bubbles rose to the surface, popping to release foul gouts of warp-tainted gas. The pressure in the air became suffocating. This wasn't a minor summoning. This was an invitation. They were trying to open a true rift, to let something real and terrible into the world. Naruto didn't hesitate. He leaped from the catwalk, his chakra cloak blazing into incandescent life. He sailed over the heads of the chanting cultists and landed on the platform, placing himself between the voice and the boy. The cultists' chanting faltered for a moment as the golden light washed over them, but the voice just laughed. It was a horrible, wet, multi-layered sound, as if 3 people were laughing at once. "The little light returns," it hissed, its voice a chorus of whispers. "The being of pure, natural order, come to face the truth of chaos. You cannot stop this, little light. My master has tasted your energy through our failed servant. It hungers for it. It wants to unmake you, to corrupt that which cannot be corrupted. It will be exquisite." The pool erupted. From the glowing sludge, a thing of nightmares clawed its way out. It was immense, a towering horror of writhing tentacles, dozens of grasping claws, and a central maw filled with row after row of teeth. It had no fixed form, its body shifting and flowing like liquid nightmare. A greater demon, a herald of Tsench, the changer of ways. Its very presence made Naruto's soul reel. The 9 tails inside him roared a challenge, its ancient instincts screaming that this was an enemy worthy of its hate. The demon fixed its myriad eyes on Naruto, and a psychic shriek of pure, avaricious glee slammed into his mind. It was like being hit by a tidal wave of madness. He saw visions of his friends corrupted, of Konoha burning, of everything he loved twisted into something grotesque. He staggered, his golden cloak flickering. "Yes!" The demon's voice boomed in his skull. "So much light! So much order! It will be so beautiful when it screams. Naruto gritted his teeth, forcing the visions back. He couldn't fight this thing with pure power. Not here, not now. The boy was right behind him. The cultists were everywhere. He needed something else. He needed the one power in his arsenal that was the absolute antithesis of the warp's formless chaos. He needed the stillness of nature. He closed his eyes. The sounds of the chanting, the groaning of the machinery, the demon's psychic shrieks, he let them all fade. He reached out, not for the energy of this dead world, but for the energy within himself. The perfect balance. The union of body, spirit, and the natural order that existed even in the soul of a man from a living world. He gathered nature chakra from the only source available, the memory of it, the ideal of it, the unshakable truth of it that resided in his own core. When he opened his eyes, they were no longer blue. They were slitted, golden-orange, the eyes of a toad. Perfect sage-like markings appeared around his eyes. Sage mode. The demon lunged, a forest of claws reaching for him. Naruto moved. He was faster than thought, more fluid than water. He flowed between the claws, his hands a blur. He didn't strike the demon. He struck the air around it, his palms weaving a complex pattern, each movement trailing a line of golden light. He wasn't fighting the demon, he was building a cage. The demon howled in confusion as it felt the energy in the air change. The raw, chaotic nature of the warp was being ordered, shaped, contained. Naruto was drawing on the principles of the Uzumaki clan's Fuinjutsu, the art of sealing, but he was improvising. He was using his own life force, his own natural energy, as the ink. With a final, explosive push of chakra, he slammed his palms together. Sage art, golden earth seal! A latticework of golden light erupted from his hands, expanding outward in a complex geometric pattern. It slammed into the demon, wrapping around its writhing form. The creature shrieked in agony, its body convulsing as the pure, ordered energy of the seal fought to contain its chaotic essence. The light flared, blindingly bright, and then silence. The demon was gone. In its place, floating in the air above the now still pool of sludge, was a single, fist-sized sphere of crystal. Inside it, a tiny, malevolent shape twisted and raged, forever trapped. The cultists stared, their mouths agape. The voice, his connection to his patron severed, crumpled to the platform, a broken, ordinary man. Naruto stood over him, breathing heavily, the toad-like markings fading from his face. He looked at the crystal, then at the boy, who was staring at him with an expression of pure, unadulterated awe. He walked over, knelt, and gently untied the boy's bonds. It's okay, he said softly. You're safe now. Your sister is waiting for you. As the boy ran off into the darkness, Naruto picked up the crystal. It was warm in his hand, humming with a trapped malevolence. He had done it. He had not just fought a demon, he had sealed it. In a universe where demons were eternal, unkillable horrors, he had found a way to lock one away forever. He knew this victory wouldn't last. The Inquisition would hear of it. The other cults would hear of it. And the thing in the crystal, it was a trophy, but also a target. But for one glorious moment, in the fetid depths of an underhive, a boy from another world had proven that hope wasn't just an illusion. It was a weapon. The news of the sealing didn't just travel through the underhive, it detonated. Within a week, Naruto's section of the city had become a pilgrimage site. The desperate, the curious, and the genuinely faithful came from miles around, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Golden One, who had imprisoned a demon in a crystal. Children left small offerings, a pretty rock, a piece of edible fungus, a crudely carved figurine. The adults, for the first time in their lives, began to talk about something other than survival. They talked about hope. Naruto tried to discourage it. He wasn't a god or a saint, he was a ninja trying to do the right thing. But he couldn't bring himself to turn them away. He'd listen to their problems, help where he could, and offer a kind word. He became a de facto leader, a judge, a mediator. He organized scavenging parties, set up a system for sharing clean water, and even taught a few of the more able-bodied people basic self-defense. Kalen was apoplectic. He arrived at Naruto's hab one day with a full squad of Imperial Guardsmen, their lost guns held at the ready. This has gone far enough, he snarled, shoving his way past the small crowd that had gathered outside. You're building a personality cult. Do you have any idea what the Inquisition does to people who build cults? They don't ask questions, boy. They just burn. Naruto was seated on his cot, the demon crystal sitting on the table before him, its inner light pulsing faintly. He looked up at Kalen, his expression weary. I'm not building a cult. I'm helping people. You're creating a power base. Kalen shot back, jabbing a finger at him. An unsanctioned power base, led by an unsanctioned psyker. You might as well paint a target on your head. And that, he pointed at the crystal, his voice dropping to a fearful whisper. That thing is an anathema. A trapped piece of the warp. Do you know what the forces of chaos would do to get their hands on that? Every cult in the sector is going to be coming for you now. You've made yourself the most valuable heretic in the Underhive. As if on cue, the Voxcaster on the table crackled to life. It was a frequency Naruto had never heard before, and the voice that emerged was slick, seductive, and utterly inhuman. Little Golden One, we see you. We taste your light from across the stars. Such a pretty cage you've made for my brother. But cages can be opened, little one. And when they are, the one inside will be grateful. The Changer of Ways offers you a bargain. Release the prisoner, and we will grant you a place at the feast. Resist, and we will unmake everything you've built here. We will turn your followers inside out, one by one, until you beg us to stop. The Voxcaster exploded in a shower of sparks. Kalen stared at it, his face pale. The guardsmen outside shifted nervously. The crowd that had gathered began to murmur in fear. Naruto stood up, his jaws set. Then I'll protect them. With what? Kalen demanded. With your fancy light show and your I won't kill policy? These aren't thugs, boy. These are demons and their most fanatical servants. They won't stop because you asked them nicely. Naruto looked at the crystal, then at the frightened faces of the people outside his door. He knew Kalen was right. He'd been lucky so far, fighting minor cults and half-formed demons. But he'd drawn the attention of something far bigger now. A true chaos god, or at least a powerful aspect of one, was taking an interest. The next attack wouldn't be a handful of madmen with rusty knives. It would be a war. He looked at the guardsmen. They were scared, but they were here. Kalen, for all his bluster, had come to warn him. In this brutal universe, that was something. Sergeant, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I need your help. Not the Inquisition's. Yours. And theirs. He gestured to the guardsmen. I can't fight an army alone. But maybe together we can protect these people. Kalen stared at him for a long moment, his cybernetic arm whirring softly as his fingers clenched and unclenched. He looked at the crystal, at the hopeful faces of the Underhivers, at his own men. He was a lifelong soldier of the Imperium, a man who had followed orders and believed in nothing but his duty. But something in Naruto's eyes, in the sheer, stubborn refusal to give in to the darkness, made him pause. You're asking me to commit heresy, he said quietly. I'm asking you to help me save lives, Naruto replied. Isn't that what the Emperor would want? Kalen was silent for a long time. The sounds of the Underhive, the dripping water, the distant clang of machinery, the frightened whispers of the crowd, filled the space between them. Finally, he let out a long, weary sigh. The Emperor protects, he muttered, the words sounding hollow on his lips. He turned to his men. All right, you maggots. You've heard the Golden Heretic. We've got a position to fortify and civilians to train. Move it! As the guardsmen scrambled into action, a flicker of movement in the deep shadows behind a collapsed hab unit caught Naruto's eye. It was there and gone in an instant, but his enhanced senses registered it. A figure, cloaked in darkness, watching. It wasn't a cultist. The presence was too focused, too controlled. It felt like a predator assessing its prey. Naruto's hand drifted towards a kunai he'd scavenged and sharpened. The Inquisition's eyes, Kalen had said. They were everywhere. But this didn't feel like the Inquisition. This felt older, colder. This felt like something from the nightmares the Underhivers whispered about when they thought no one was listening. The Space Marines. Not the Ultramarines he'd met, with their noble blue and gold. Something else. Something that moved in the dark. The figure was gone. But the message was clear, Naruto Uzumaki was no longer just a problem for the Underhive. He was a variable in a game played by powers far beyond his comprehension. And the next move was not his to make. They came 3 nights later, under the cover of a manufactured blackout. The already dim lumen strips of the Underhive died completely, plunging the hab clusters into a darkness so complete it felt solid. The only light came from the bioluminescent fungi and the faint, pulsing glow of Naruto's crystal, which he kept hidden in a reinforced container beneath his cot. The attack wasn't a chaotic cultist charge. It was a surgical strike. The first warning Naruto had was the wet thud of a body hitting the ground outside his door. He was on his feet in an instant, chakra flaring, as the plasteel door was torn from its hinges like tissue paper. Silhouetted in the doorway were 3 figures. They were taller than the Ultramarines, their power armor a sickly, pale green, adorned with chaos stars and leering demon faces. Trophies, skulls, severed hands, imperial icons defiled, hung from chains on their armor. They moved with an unnerving, predatory grace, their helmet lenses glowing a deep, malevolent red. Chaos Space Marines. The Emperor's children, by the look of their flayed skin tabards and the discordant, painful music that seemed to emanate from their armor's vox grills. The lead Marine, his helmet adorned with a crest of brass, raised a bolt pistol. The Architect of Fate sends its regards, little light. It hissed, its voice a multilayered scream of pleasure and pain. The demon crystal. Surrender it, and your death will be exquisite. Naruto didn't hesitate. He was already moving, a golden blur. He ducked under the bolt pistol shot, the mass-reactive shell exploding against the back wall of his hab. He slammed into the lead marine, his chakra-enhanced fist connecting with the warrior's chest plate. The ceramite cracked, and the marine was hurled backwards, crashing into his comrades. But they were space marines, not cultists. They recovered instantly. Chain's words roared to life, their teeth whining. One lunged at Naruto, its blade a screaming arc of death. Naruto flowed around it, his movements a dance of pure agility. He landed a kick to the marine's helm, snapping its head back. Another marine swung a power fist, the crackling energy field promising instant death. Naruto leaped, using the marine's own arm as a springboard, and landed behind him. This was a fight he couldn't win with brute force. These were warriors engineered for war, their bodies and minds honed over centuries. His only advantage was speed and the alien nature of his power. He needed to get to the crystal. He needed to get his people out. He burst from the hab, his chakra cloak blazing, hoping to draw them away. The Chaos Marines followed, their heavy footfalls echoing in the darkness. They were faster than they looked, their ancient warplate allowing them to move with terrifying speed. The fight became a running battle through the Underhive. Naruto led them on a chase through collapsing hab units, across rickety bridges, and into the labyrinthine passages of the sump levels. He used shadow clones, a technique they'd never seen, to confuse them. They simply laughed and slaughtered the clones, their bolters and chains words tearing through the chakra constructs with contemptuous ease. He was losing. He was tiring. And they were hurting him. They drove him into a dead end, a vast, cathedral-like space that had once been a mining chapel, its vaulted ceiling lost in darkness. Ancient, corroded statues of imperial saints looked down from the walls, their stone faces cracked and weeping rust. At the far end, on a raised dais where an altar once stood, waited the fourth member of their party. This one was different. His armor was more ornate, covered in flowing script and demonic faces that seemed to writhe in the dim light. He carried a staff topped with a screaming, brass demon's head, and his helmet was off, revealing a face of terrifying beauty, pale, angular, with eyes that burned with the cold fire of absolute madness. A sorcerer of Tsench. The little light cornered at last. The sorcerer purred, his voice a caress of silk and broken glass. You've caused quite a stir in the lower heavens, little one. A soul that cannot be corrupted. A power that seals, rather than destroys. My master is fascinated. He gestured, and the three Chaos Marines formed a semicircle, blocking any escape. The crystal. The sorcerer continued. Give it to me, and I will grant you a swift death. Your soul will be offered to the Changer of Ways, to be studied for eternity. A small price for such a unique specimen. Naruto stood in the center of the chapel, breathing heavily. He was bruised, battered, and exhausted. His chakra was running low. He looked at the sorcerer, at the hulking warriors, at the mocking statues of a god he didn't believe in. He thought of the people he tried to protect, huddled in their homes, terrified. He thought of Kalen and his guardsmen, who had chosen to stand with a heretic. He thought of his own world, so far away, and the friends who probably thought he was dead. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the crystal. It pulsed in his hand, the trap demon writhing in anticipation. The sorcerer's eyes widened with avarice. Yes, give it to me. Naruto looked at the crystal, then at the sorcerer. A slow, grim smile spread across his face. You want it so badly? Then come and get it. He channeled every last drop of his chakra into the crystal. Not to break the seal, but to supercharge it. The crystal blazed with golden light, so bright it was painful. The trap demon shrieked in agony. The Chaos Marines recoiled, hissing. The sorcerer raised a hand to shield his eyes, a look of disbelief on his face. What are you doing? He screamed. You'll destroy it. You'll destroy yourself. Naruto didn't answer. He held the blazing crystal aloft, a golden sun in the heart of darkness. The light pushed back against the corrupting influence of the Chaos Marines, against the psychic pressure of the sorcerer. It was a final, desperate act of defiance. And then, from the shadows high above, a new voice spoke. It was deep, calm, and resonated with power. An interesting strategy, young one. Foolish, but interesting. A figure dropped from the darkness, landing silently between Naruto and the Chaos Marines. He was an ultramarine, but unlike any Naruto had seen. His armor was a deep, regal blue, trimmed with gold, and he bore the marks of tremendous age and countless battles. In his hands he carried a blade that shimmered with an inner light, a power sword of exquisite craftsmanship. He was flanked by two other ultramarines, their bolters trained on the chaos filth. The Chaos Sorcerer stared, his face contorting in rage and fear. Dilliman's lapdog! He spat. You dare interfere in the work of the Changer? The ultramarine captain, for that was clearly his rank, ignored the sorcerer. He looked at Naruto, his gaze unreadable behind his helmet. Chief Librarian Tigurius sensed a disturbance. A light in the darkness, he called it. A light worth preserving. He turned to face the Chaos Marines. These creatures are an abomination. They will be purged. What followed was a blur of violence. The Ultramarines moved with a coordinated precision that made the Chaos Marine savagery look clumsy. The captain engaged the sorcerer. His power soared, a blur of light that carved through the sorcerer's psychic defenses. The other two Ultramarines met the charge of the three Chaos Marines, their bolters and chains words roaring. Naruto, drained and swaying on his feet, could only watch. The fight was short, brutal, and absolute. Within minutes, the Chaos Marines lay dead or dying, their corrupted bodies torn apart by holy bolt shells and ceramite shredding chains words. The sorcerer, his staff broken, his power spent, was run through by the captain's blade. He dissolved into a shriek of warp-tainted energy, leaving nothing behind but a faint, greasy smear on the stone floor. The captain turned back to Naruto. The golden light from the crystal was fading now, returning to its normal, pulsing state. Naruto looked at the warrior who had saved him, his expression a mixture of gratitude and wariness. "Why?" he asked, his voice a whisper. The captain removed his helmet, revealing a face that was stern, noble, and deeply lined with age and responsibility. He looked at Naruto with an expression that was impossible to read. "Because, Naruto Uzumaki, in a galaxy of endless war and absolute corruption, you are something we have not seen in 10,000 years. He paused, his gaze intense. "You are a symbol. And symbols, if properly placed, can win wars that armies cannot." He offered a gauntlet hand. "I am Captain Severus of the Ultramarines. It seems we have much to discuss." Naruto looked at the offered hand, then at the bodies of the Chaos Marines, then at the crystal in his own hand, still pulsing with the trapped essence of a demon. He had a million questions. Who were these new enemies? Why had the Ultramarines saved him? What did they want? But for now, one thing was clear: he was no longer alone. And in this nightmare universe, that was a start. He reached out and grasped the captain's hand. The chamber was a stark contrast to the Underhive's decay. Located deep within a secret Imperial outpost buried in the hive's mid-levels, it was clean, well-lit, and protected by layers of void shields and psychic wards. At its center was a circular table, and seated around it were the key players in Naruto's new life. Inquisitor Forlik sat rigidly, his pale eyes flickering with barely contained suspicion. Sergeant Kalen stood behind him, his weathered face a mask of discomfort. Captain Severus of the Ultramarines sat with the stillness of a statue, his ornate armor gleaming. And at the head of the table, his horn helmet set before him, sat Chief Librarian Tigurius, his ancient, wise eyes fixed on Naruto. Naruto himself sat across from them, still in the scavenged clothes of the Underhive, the demon crystal resting on the table before him. He felt like a bug under a magnifying glass. Tigurius spoke first, his voice a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in the chest. "The demon you have captured, Naruto Uzumaki. It is a herald of Sench, a being of significant power. Its loss is a blow to the archenemy's plans in this sector. Its continued imprisonment is a complication they will not ignore." "It's a target," Forlik snapped. "A beacon. As long as that thing exists, every cultist, every renegade, every damned soul in this sector is going to be drawn to it. To him." He jabbed a finger at Naruto. "He's a liability." "He is an asset," Severus countered, his voice a low rumble. "His power is unique. It is anathema to the warp in a way that even the most powerful psyker cannot replicate. He did not just banish the demon, he imprisoned it. Permanently. That is a capability the Imperium has not possessed since the Dark Age of technology. A capability we do not understand," Forlik shot back. "We don't know where his power comes from. We don't know its limits. We don't know if it can be turned against us. He is an unknown, and in my experience, unknowns become threats." Naruto listened to them argue about him as if he weren't there. It was frustrating, but also informative. He was starting to understand the factions. The Inquisition saw him as a problem to be solved. The Space Marines saw him as a potential weapon. And caught in the middle were ordinary soldiers like Kalen, who just wanted to survive. Finally, Tigurius raised a hand, and the room fell silent. He looked at Naruto, his gaze penetrating. "You have been in this galaxy for less than a month. In that time, you have disrupted several cult operations, saved countless lives, and captured a demon of significant power. You have done this not through brute force, but through compassion and a stubborn refusal to accept the darkness. Why?" Naruto met his gaze. "Because it's the right thing to do. In my world, I was taught that a leader protects those who can't protect themselves. That you don't give up on people, no matter how far gone they seem. That hope is worth fighting for." He paused, his voice hardening slightly. "I've seen what your Imperium does. It burns away the problem instead of fixing it. It kills the confused and the desperate along with the truly evil. That's not protection. That's just more of the same. Silence greeted his words. Forlick looked apoplectic. Kalen shifted uncomfortably. Severus's face was unreadable. But Tigurius smiled. It was a small, sad thing, but it was a smile. A naive philosophy, the chief librarian said softly. And yet, it has yielded results that centuries of imperial doctrine have failed to achieve in this sector. He leaned forward. The demon you captured. What do you intend to do with it? Naruto looked at the crystal. It pulsed, and he could feel the hatred radiating from within. I don't know. I can't destroy it. I can feel that. It's not something that can be unmade, not by me. But I can keep it contained. Maybe I can use it. Use it? Forlick sputtered. Use a demon? That's heresy of the highest order. Not as a weapon, Naruto clarified. As a warning. A symbol. Look. He pointed to the crystal. This thing is everything your universe is afraid of. It's chaos, it's corruption, it's the end of hope. And it's trapped. Trapped by someone who refused to give up. Maybe if people see that, if they see that the darkness can be beaten, they'll stop being so afraid. They'll stop turning to cults for answers. They'll start hoping again. It was a grand vision, and even as he said it, Naruto knew how impossible it sounded. This wasn't a world of villages and hidden ninja. This was a galaxy of endless war, where hope was a luxury and compassion was a death sentence. But Tigurius was nodding slowly. A dangerous idea. A beautiful, foolish, dangerous idea. But it has merit. He looked at Severus. Captain, your thoughts? Severus was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the crystal. Finally, he spoke. The Codex Astartes teaches that the enemy must be understood before it can be defeated. This Naruto Uzumaki, offers a form of understanding we have never possessed. He has seen the darkness and rejected it, not through ignorance, but through choice. That is a weapon more powerful than any bolter. He turned to Naruto. The Ultramarines will offer you protection. Not as a tool of the Inquisition, but as a consultant. An ally. We will provide you with resources, information, and a secure base of operations. In return, you will continue your work. You will hunt the cults, protect the innocent, and study the enemy. And you will teach us what you learn. Forlick slammed his fist on the table. This is an outrage. You are circumventing the authority of the Holy Ordos. I will not stand for it. Tigurius fixed him with a cold stare. You will stand for it, Inquisitor, because Lord Guilliman himself has taken an interest in this matter. The Primarch has read my reports. He is curious. And when the Avenging Sun is curious, even the Inquisition listens. The name hit the room like a bomb. Guilliman. The Primarch. The living son of the Emperor. Even Forlick paled. Naruto didn't know who Guilliman was, but the reaction told him everything he needed to know. For now, at least, he had powerful allies. But he also knew that alliances in this universe were temporary, and trust was a commodity in short supply. He looked at the crystal, then at the faces around the table. Inquisitor, Space Marine, Soldier, Psyker. They were all products of this brutal world, shaped by fear and war. And yet, here they were, arguing about hope. About him. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. 1 year later. The Underhive of Primus had changed. Not dramatically, it was still a decaying, polluted hellhole. But there were pockets of light now. Literal light, in the form of properly maintained lumen strips in a few key hab blocks. And metaphorical light, in the hope that flickered in the eyes of its inhabitants. Naruto stood on a platform overlooking the settlement he had helped build. It wasn't much, a few hundred hab units, a clean water recycling system he designed with help from the Ultramarines Tech Marines, a small clinic run by a former guardsman medic, and a school where children learned to read and write instead of how to scavenge and steal. They called it Konoha, after his home. The name made him smile, even as it ached. Sergeant Kalen stood beside him, his cybernetic arm now bearing the insignia of the settlement's militia, a crude golden spiral on a field of blue. He'd retired from the guard, officially, though everyone knew he still reported to the Inquisition. But over the past year, his reports had become favorable. They're asking about you again, Kalen said, nodding towards a group of children playing in the dusty square below. The Golden Guardian. Some of the older ones think you're a saint. The ecclesiarchy's going to have a fit. Naruto shrugged. Let them. I'm not a saint. I'm just a guy who refuses to quit. He looked at the crystal, which now hung from a chain around his neck, its light dimmed to a faint, almost peaceful pulse. The demon inside had stopped struggling months ago. It just waited. Naruto could feel its hatred, but also its fear. It knew it was beaten. The year had been brutal. There had been more attacks, cultists, renegades, even another, smaller demon that had tried to free its trapped brother. Each time, Naruto had stood his ground, his powers growing as he learned to blend his ninja arts with the grim reality of this galaxy. He learned to use shadow clones for reconnaissance, to use his chakra to reinforce crumbling structures, to use his sage-enhanced senses to detect the subtle taint of chaos before it could take root. He'd also learned to kill. Not often, and never without reason, but when faced with monsters who would slaughter children for fun, he had accepted that some things couldn't be saved. It was a compromise that haunted him, but he carried it. It was part of the weight of this universe. Captain Severus appeared behind them, his massive form somehow managing to move silently. He had become a frequent visitor, and over time, a grudging respect had grown between them. Severus still saw Naruto as an asset, but he also saw him as a person. In the Imperium, that was a rare gift. "The Primarch has sent word," Severus said, his voice low. "He wishes to meet you. On Macridge. He believes your unique perspective could be valuable in the coming conflicts." Naruto turned to face him. "The coming conflicts?" Severus nodded grimly. "The war grows more turbulent. The cicatrix male dictum, the Great Rift, it pulses with a new energy. Lord Gilliman believes a great chaos storm is building. A new Black Crusade, perhaps. Or something worse." He paused. "He believes your power, this sealing art, may be one of the few weapons that can truly harm the enemy." Naruto looked out over his small settlement, at the people who had come to rely on him. He thought of the wider galaxy, of the billions who suffered in darkness, of the endless war that consumed everything. He was just one man. One ninja from a forgotten world. What could he possibly do against a Black Crusade? But then he remembered his own world. He remembered fighting gods and madmen, facing down impossible odds, refusing to give up even when everyone told him it was hopeless. He remembered the power of believing in people, of giving them hope. He touched the crystal at his chest. The demon within pulsed, a silent reminder of what he had already achieved. "I'll go," he said quietly. "But I'm not leaving them behind." He gestured to the settlement. "Konoha goes with me. We'll need a place to rebuild. Somewhere safe." Severus nodded, as if he had expected this answer. "Lord Gilliman has anticipated your response. There is a world on the edge of Ultramar. It is sparsely populated, rich in resources, and strategically located. It could be a home. For you and your people." Naruto looked at him, surprised. "He'd do that? For us?" Severus' stern face softened, just slightly. "The Primarch believes in building a future, not just fighting a war. He sees in you something he has not seen in 10,000 years, genuine, incorruptible hope. That is worth more than 1,000 worlds." Kalen let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned. The Golden Heretic gets his own planet." He clapped Naruto on the shoulder. "Not bad, kid. Not bad at all." Naruto smiled, but it was a bittersweet smile. He looked up at the smog-choked sky, remembering the blue skies of his own world, the faces of his friends, the village he had called home. He would never see them again. That loss was a permanent scar on his soul. But here, in this nightmare galaxy, he had found a new purpose. A new family. A new home. The evacuation took months. Thousands of underhivers, the desperate and the damned, the forgotten and the lost, flocked to Naruto's banner. They loaded onto Imperial transport shuttles, their hollow eyes filling with tears as they saw the sky for the first time in their lives, not the rusted ceiling of the hive, but the true, star-filled sky of the void. As his own shuttle lifted off, Naruto stood at the viewport, watching the hive city shrink to a speck, then disappear into the gloom of the planet. He thought of all he had left behind, the friends he would never see again, the world he could never return to, the innocence he had lost. But he also thought of what lay ahead. A new world. A new beginning. A chance to build something good in the heart of darkness. The crystal at his chest pulsed, a faint, trapped heartbeat. A reminder of the enemy that would never stop hunting him. A reminder of the power he carried. The shuttle lurched as it entered the warp, and Naruto felt the familiar, sickening pressure of that other dimension pressing against his soul. But this time, he didn't flinch. He let his chakra cloak flare, a gentle, golden light that pushed back against the darkness, illuminating the faces of the frightened people around him. They looked at him, and in his eyes they saw not a witch, not a heretic, not a weapon. They saw hope. The Golden Guardian. It was a title he had never asked for, a burden he had never wanted. But as the shuttle carried him towards an unknown future, Naruto Uzumaki, the ninja who never gave up, accepted it. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only war. But in one small corner of that infinite, brutal galaxy, a single golden light refused to be extinguished. And that, perhaps, was enough. The planet they gave him was called Viridia Secundus. It was a world of contradictions, lush forests that stretched to the horizon, oceans of startling blue, and skies that shifted from pale gold at dawn to deep violet at dusk. It was beautiful in a way that made Naruto's heart ache with memories of home. But it was also a world scarred by the Imperium's neglect. Ancient cities, built during some long-forgotten age of expansion, lay in ruins, their skeletal remains jutting from the encroaching jungle like the bones of dead giants. The soil was rich, but poisoned in places by old chemical weapons. The forests teemed with life, but much of it was hostile, mutated by centuries of exposure to the warp's distant touch. It was, in short, a project. And Naruto Uzumaki had never been one to shy away from a challenge. The first year was chaos. Thousands of underhivers, people who had never seen sunlight or breathed clean air, were suddenly confronted with open skies and endless horizons. Some thrived, their spirits lifting with the weight of possibility. Others cowered, unable to cope with a world that wasn't trying to kill them every second of every day. There were accidents, people wandering into the forest and not returning, children falling into old industrial pits, outbreaks of disease from contaminated water sources. Naruto worked himself to exhaustion. He cleared land with his own hands, his chakra-enhanced strength tearing down dead trees and moving boulders. He organized hunting parties to cull the more dangerous wildlife. He mediated disputes, comforted the grieving, and celebrated every small victory, a successful harvest, a new building, a child's first laugh. Sergeant Kalen, now officially retired and serving as Naruto's second-in-command, watched it all with a mixture of amazement and weary resignation. "You're going to kill yourself, you know that?" he said one evening, finding Naruto collapsed against a half-built wall, his chakra cloak flickering weakly. "You can't do everything yourself. That's what we have people for." Naruto looked up at him, his eyes bloodshot but still burning with that stubborn fire. "They need to see me working. They need to know I'm not just some distant leader sitting in a nice house while they break their backs. That's not how it works." Kalen snorted. "That's exactly how it works in the Imperium. The leaders sit in nice houses. The people break their backs. That's the natural order of things." "Then we're going to change the natural order," Naruto said, pulling himself to his feet. "We're going to build something different. Something better." The settlement grew. They called it New Konoha, and it rose from the ruins of an old imperial administrative center, its walls built from recycled plasteel, and its streets laid out in a spiral pattern that Naruto had designed himself. At its center, they built a tower, not a fortress, not a palace, but a simple, sturdy structure with a wide balcony at the top where Naruto would stand each morning and evening, his golden chakra cloak flaring just enough to be seen from anywhere in the settlement. It was a beacon. A reminder. A promise. The Ultramarines were true to their word. Captain Severus visited regularly, bringing supplies, technical expertise, and increasingly, genuine curiosity. He would walk through the settlement, his massive blue-armored form drawing stares from the children and nervous glances from the adults, and he would watch. He watched the way people worked together, the way they shared resources, the way they settled disputes without resorting to violence. He watched Naruto interact with his people, not as a ruler, but as a friend, a protector, a fellow worker. One day, after observing a particularly heated community meeting where Naruto had patiently listened to every complaint and then guided the group to a consensus, Severus approached him. "In the Ultramarines, we study the Codex Astartes," he said, his voice thoughtful. "It contains the wisdom of our pre-march, the strategies and philosophies that have guided our chapter for 10,000 years. It teaches many things, discipline, tactics, the nature of command." He paused, looking at the bustling settlement around them. "But it does not teach this. This, communal decision-making. This reliance on the wisdom of the many rather than the authority of the few. It is inefficient. And yet your people are happy. They work hard. They do not rebel. They do not form cults." He turned to Naruto, his ancient eyes unreadable. "Why?" Naruto thought about it for a moment. "Because they have a stake in things. They're not just cogs in a machine. They're building their own home, their own future. Every decision they make, every problem they solve, it's theirs. They own it." He smiled. "In my village, we had a saying, those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. It's about community. About looking out for each other. That's what we're building here." Severus was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I will include this observation in my next report to Lord Guilliman. He will find it interesting." The second year brought new challenges. The first was external. A chaos warband, remnants of the Emperor's children who had survived the battle in the Underhive, had tracked Naruto to Viridia. They were led by a being of nightmare, a creature that had once been a space marine but had given itself so completely to the pleasure-pain of slayage that it was now something else entirely. Its flesh was a patchwork of scars and piercings, its voice a discordant symphony of moans and screams, and its very presence made the air thick with a cloying, sickly sweet perfume. They came at night, as chaos always does. 100 warriors, some mortal cultists, Others, twisted Chaos Space Marines, emerged from the forest and descended on New Konoha's walls. The settlement's militia, trained by Kalen and armed with lost guns provided by the Ultramarines, fought bravely. But they were farmers and craftspeople, not soldiers. The line began to buckle. Naruto met the Chaos Lord in the center of the settlement, their battle illuminating the night with flashes of gold and pulses of corrupt energy. The creature was fast, faster than any opponent Naruto had faced, its movements a blur of ecstatic violence. It laughed as it fought, a horrible, multi-layered sound that seemed to worm its way into the brain. "Pretty little light!" it shrieked, its claws raking across Naruto's chakra cloak and leaving trails of psychic cold. "So much purity! So much discipline! Let me teach you pleasure! Let me show you what it feels like to truly live!" Naruto didn't answer. He couldn't afford the distraction. He flowed around the creature's attacks, his sage-enhanced senses allowing him to anticipate its movements, but he couldn't land a decisive blow. The Chaos Lord was too fast, too unpredictable, too drunk on its own maddening existence. The battle lasted for what felt like hours. Naruto's people were dying. The militia was being pushed back. And he couldn't end it. Then, a new sound cut through the chaos. The deep, percussive roar of bolter fire. Blue-armored giants descended from the sky, their jump packs flaming, their weapons spitting death. Captain Severus and a squad of Ultramarines had arrived. The tide turned instantly. The Kate's cultists were slaughtered. The Chaos Space Marines, caught between the Ultramarines' fury and the settlement's desperate defenders, were cut down one by one. The Chaos Lord, seeing its army destroyed, howled in rage and launched itself at Severus. Naruto moved faster. He appeared between them, his hands already weaving signs. "Sage art, adamantine sealing chain!" Golden chains, forged from pure chakra, erupted from his palms and wrapped around the Chaos Lord, binding its limbs, its body, its very soul. The creature shrieked, its form beginning to dissolve as the chains squeezed tighter. For a moment, it struggled, its corrupt energy flaring against the golden bonds. But Naruto held firm, pouring every ounce of his will into the seal. With a final, agonized scream that seemed to echo in the warp itself, the Chaos Lord was gone. Not banished, banishment was temporary, a demon could always return. No, this was something else. The creature's essence was pulled into the crystal at Naruto's chest, joining its trapped brother in an eternal prison. Silence fell over the settlement. The surviving defenders stared at their leader, their expressions a mixture of awe and terror. He had just absorbed a demon, a Lord of Chaos, into his body. Naruto collapsed to his knees, gasping. The crystal at his chest pulsed wildly, its light flickering between gold and a sickly, corrupt pink. He could feel the two demons inside it, writhing, fighting, feeding on each other's hatred. The weight of them was immense, a pressure on his soul that threatened to crush him. Severus was at his side in an instant, his massive hand gripping Naruto's shoulder. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice tight with concern. "That was not a simple demon. That was a champion of Slaanesh. You cannot contain such evil within yourself." Naruto looked up at him, his face pale, sweat streaming down his brow. I had to. It was going to kill them. I had to." He gasped, the crystal flaring again. "I can hold it. I can hold them both. But I need help." The second challenge of that year was internal. News of the battle, and of Naruto's impossible feat, spread across the sector. The Inquisition, which had been content to let the Ultramarines monitor the Viridia experiment, took a renewed interest. Inquisitor Forlick, his suspicion vindicated, demanded that Naruto be taken into custody for further study. The Ecclesiarchy, hearing whispers of a golden saint who absorbed demons, declared him a heretic of the highest order and called for his immediate execution. For a month, New Konoha was a powder keg. Ultramarines' ships orbited the planet, protecting it from inquisitorial and ecclesiarchy forces. Captain Severus argued tirelessly on Naruto's behalf, citing Lord Guilliman's personal interests. Sergeant Kalen, now commanding a militia of nearly 1,000, prepared for a fight he knew they couldn't win. And through it all, Naruto suffered. The two demons in his crystal fought constantly, their psychic struggles sending waves of agony through his body. He couldn't sleep. He could barely eat. His chakra, once a steady, golden flame, now flickered erratically, sometimes flaring with corrupt energy before he could beat it back. The people of New Konoha saw their leader suffering. They brought him food he couldn't eat. They sat with him through nights of torment. They whispered prayers to gods he didn't believe in, hoping for his recovery. One night, a young girl named Alara, one of the first children he had saved in the Underhive, came to him. She was 10 now, healthy and strong, with bright eyes and a fierce loyalty to the man who had given her a future. She found him on the balcony of the central tower, staring at the stars, the crystal at his chest pulsing with a sickly, corrupt light. "Golden One," she said softly, using the name the children had given him. Are you in pain? Naruto turned to look at her, and she gasped. His eyes, usually so bright, were dim. His whisker marks seemed darker, more pronounced. He looked old, tired, broken. I'm okay, Elara, he lied. Just a little tired. She wasn't fooled. She walked up to him and, without hesitation, placed her small hand on the crystal. Naruto flinched, expecting her to be harmed, corrupted, destroyed. But nothing happened. The crystal's light, for a moment, steadied. The corrupt pink faded, replaced by a warm, steady gold. Elara looked up at him, her eyes wide. It doesn't like me, she said simply. It's scared of me. Of us. Of all of us. Naruto stared at her, then at the crystal. He understood. The demons fed on fear, on despair, on isolation. But here, in this settlement, surrounded by people who loved him, who believed in him, who had hope, they were weak. They couldn't corrupt a community that refused to be corrupted. He pulled Elara into a hug, tears streaming down his face. For the first time in months, the pain in his chest eased. The third year was a time of rebuilding and reconciliation. Lord Guilliman himself, the avenging son, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, came to Viridia Secundus. His arrival was an event of unimaginable proportions, a living god descending from the heavens to walk among mortals. The people of New Konoha, who had learned to be wary of authority, watched his approach with a mixture of awe and fear. Naruto met him at the settlement's gates. The Primarch was taller than any space marine, his armor a masterpiece of artifice, his face stern but not unkind. He looked at Naruto for a long moment, his ancient eyes assessing, measuring. Chief Librarian Tigurius spoke of you, Guilliman said, his voice deep and resonant. He called you a light in the darkness. Captain Severus called you a symbol. The Inquisition calls you a heretic. He paused. I prefer to make my own judgments. Naruto met his gaze. He had faced gods before, the Sage of Six Paths, Kagaya, creatures of immense power. He was not intimidated. Then judge, he said simply. But know that everything I've done here, I've done to protect these people. I won't apologize for that. Guilliman studied him for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then, slowly, a small smile crossed his features. No. I don't suppose you would. He looked around at the settlement, at the clean streets, the thriving gardens, the children playing without fear. This is remarkable. In 10,000 years I have seen countless worlds, countless civilizations. I have seen the heights of human achievement and the depths of human depravity. But I have never seen anything quite like this. He turned back to Naruto. How did you do it? Naruto shrugged. I just treated them like people. Gave them a chance. Listened to them. He touched the crystal at his chest, which pulsed with a steady, golden light. They gave me a reason to keep fighting. Guilliman nodded slowly. The Imperium has forgotten how to do that. We have become a machine, efficient, powerful, but cold. We fight to survive, not to live. We have lost sight of what we are fighting for. He placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. You have reminded me. And for that, I am grateful. The meeting with the Primarch changed everything. Guilliman issued a decree. Viridia Secundus was to be a protected world, under the direct authority of the Ultramarines. The Inquisition's demands were overruled. The Ecclesiarchy's condemnations were ignored. Naruto Uzumaki, the Golden Guardian, was officially recognized as a friend of Ultramar. But more importantly, the people of New Konoha knew that their leader, their protector, their friend, had faced the Primarch, a living god, and had not bowed. He had stood tall, spoken his truth, and been accepted. In that moment, their faith in him became unshakable. The fourth year was a time of expansion. New Konoha grew, its population swelling with refugees from other troubled worlds, people fleeing cults, wars, natural disasters. Naruto welcomed them all, his only requirement being that they contribute to the community and reject the darkness of chaos. Most did. Some couldn't, their souls too damaged by what they had seen and done. Those, Naruto helped as best he could, and when help wasn't enough, he mourned them and moved on. The crystal at his chest now held 3 demons, the Herald of Tsench, the Champion of Slaanesh, and a lesser creature of Nurgle that had tried to infect the settlement's water supply. They fought constantly, their psychic struggles a permanent background noise in Naruto's mind. But he had learned to live with it, to use their hatred of each other to keep them contained. They were his burden, his penance, his power. Captain Severus became a regular visitor, often bringing young Ultramarines to observe and learn. He called it cultural exchange. But Naruto knew the truth. Severus was fascinated by what they were building, and he wanted his warriors to understand that there was more to the universe than war. Sergeant Kalen, now an old man by imperial standards, spent his days training the militia and telling increasingly exaggerated stories of his adventures in the Underhive. The children loved him, and he loved them back, his gruff exterior hiding a heart that had softened more than he would ever admit. And Elara, the girl who had touched the crystal and found it wanting, grew into a young woman of remarkable strength and wisdom. She became Naruto's apprentice, learning the basics of chakra control, not enough to fight, but enough to sense the presence of corruption, to help him monitor the prisoners in his crystal, to be his eyes and ears when his own senses were overwhelmed by the demon's struggles. The 5th year brought a new challenge, one that Naruto had been dreading since his first day in this galaxy. A warp rift opened in the skies above Viridia Secundus, not a small tear, but a gaping wound in reality, a swirling maelstrom of color and madness that stretched from horizon to horizon. From it poured demons, thousands of them, millions, an endless tide of nightmare flesh and corrupt energy. It was an invasion. A full-scale assault by the forces of chaos, determined to destroy the one light that had burned too brightly for too long. Naruto stood on the balcony of the central tower, watching the sky tear itself apart. The people of New Konoha gathered in the streets below, their faces turned upward, their expressions a mixture of terror and defiance. They looked to him, as they always did, for guidance, for hope, for a reason to keep fighting. He touched the crystal at his chest. 3 demons pulsed within, sensing the approach of their kin, their struggles intensifying as they tasted freedom so close at hand. Kalen appeared beside him, his lost gun held in trembling hands. "Well, kid," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "This is it. The big one. Any last words of wisdom?" Naruto looked at him, then at the people below, then at the sky tearing itself apart. He thought of his own world, so far away. He thought of his friends, his family, his village. He thought of all he had lost, and all he had gained. He smiled. It was the same smile he had worn 1,000 times before, facing 1,000 impossible odds. It was the smile of a man who refused to give up. "Yeah," he said. "I've got some words." He stepped to the edge of the balcony, his chakra cloak flaring to life, a brilliant golden light that pushed back against the darkness. The people below saw him, and their fear began to fade. The demons in the sky saw him, and their shrieks of triumph turned to howls of rage. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki!" he shouted, his voice carrying on the wind, amplified by his chakra. "I'm a ninja from the Hidden Leaf Village! I've fought gods and madmen! I've died and come back! I've faced the darkness in my own soul and made it my friend!" He pointed at the rift, at the endless tide of demons pouring through. "And I'm not afraid of you! None of us are! Because we have something you'll never have!" He looked down at his people, his family, and his smile widened. "We have each other!" The people of New Konoha roared their defiance. The militia raised their lost guns. The children clutched their parents' hands and refused to look away. And in that moment, a golden light spread across the settlement, a light that came not from Naruto alone, but from every soul below him, every heart that refused to break. The demons hesitated. The rift flickered. And Naruto Uzumaki, the Golden Guardian, leaped from the tower to meet them. The battle for Viridia Secundus lasted 3 days. On the first day, Naruto held the line alone. He stood at the edge of the settlement, his chakra cloak blazing, his shadow clones multiplying across the battlefield, each one a golden warrior that met the demonic tide with fists and feet and unbreakable will. He couldn't kill them, demons couldn't be killed, only banished, but he could hold them back. He could give his people time. The militia fought beside him, their lost guns blazing, their courage unshakable. Kalen led them, his cybernetic arm ablur as he fired and reloaded, his voice a constant stream of orders and encouragement. They fell, one by one, their bodies broken by claws and teeth and corrupt energy. But more took their places. The people of New Konoha, farmers and craftspeople and former underhivers, picked up weapons and stood in the line. On the second day, the Ultramarines arrived. Captain Severus led a strike force of 100 warriors, their blue armor a wall of discipline against the chaos. They fought with cold precision, their bolters and chains words carving through the demonic horde. But even they couldn't hold forever. The demons were endless, their numbers replenishing with every wave. Naruto, exhausted beyond measure, his chakra nearly spent, found himself fighting beside Severus. They stood back to back, surrounded by a sea of nightmare, and for a moment, they simply breathed. "I have faced many enemies," Severus said, his voice calm despite the carnage around them. "Orcs, Tyranids, traitors, demons. But I have never faced anything like this." He glanced at Naruto. "You have inspired something in these people. Something that even the Codex cannot explain." Naruto laughed, a weak, exhausted sound. "I just never learned when to quit." "An admirable quality," Severus replied. "And a contagious one." On the third day, hope arrived. From the warp rift, a new figure emerged. It was massive, far larger than any demon they had fought, its form a shifting nightmare of wings and eyes and grasping claws. A greater demon of Tsench, a lord of change, had come to claim the prize that had eluded its servants for so long. Its voice was the sound of reality tearing, of sanity crumbling, of all hope dying. Little light. It boomed, its psychic presence crushing. You have fought well. You have delayed the inevitable. But now your journey ends. Your soul will be unmade, and the prisoners you carry will be freed to dance in the glory of chaos forever. Naruto looked up at the creature. He was broken. His chakra was gone. His body was a mass of wounds. The crystal at his chest pulsed wildly, the three demons within sensing their master's approach, their struggles threatening to shatter their prison. He should have been afraid. He should have despaired. Instead, he smiled. You know, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I've heard that before. He reached deep within himself, past his chakra, past his pain, past his fear. He reached for the one thing that had never failed him, the one power that had carried him through every battle, every loss, every moment of despair. He reached for the love of his people. And they answered. From the settlement below, a wave of energy rose, not chakra, not psychic power, but something else entirely. It was hope. It was faith. It was the collective will of thousands of souls who refused to break, who refused to give up, who believed in their golden guardian with every fiber of their being. The energy washed over Naruto, filling him, healing him, empowering him. His chakra cloak flared to life, brighter than ever before, a golden sun that pushed back the darkness for miles in every direction. The demons screamed as the light touched them, their forms beginning to dissolve. The Lord of Change recoiled, its myriad eyes wide with something that looked remarkably like fear. Impossible! It shrieked. That power does not exist! It cannot exist! Naruto rose into the air, his body radiating light so bright it was painful to look at. He raised his hands, and the crystal at his chest responded, its prisoners howling in agony as the golden light purified them, burned away their corruption, reduced them to nothing more than trapped, impotent essences. You're right, Naruto said, his voice carrying across the battlefield, across the planet, across the warp itself. It shouldn't exist. Not in your universe. Not in any universe ruled by fear and hate. He looked at the Lord of Change, and his smile was gentle, sad, and utterly unbreakable. But I brought it with me. He slammed his palms together. Sage Art, planetary golden seal! The light exploded outward. It wasn't an attack, it was an embrace. It washed over the demons, and they didn't scream. They simply faded. Not banished to return another day, but dissolved unmade, their essence scattered to the winds of the warp with no hope of reforming. It washed over the rift, and the rift closed, the wound in reality healing as if it had never been. It washed over the people of New Konoha, and they felt its warmth, its love, its promise. And then it was gone. Naruto fell from the sky. He was caught by Captain Severus, who held him like a child, his ancient face etched with something that might have been awe. The battle was over. The war, for now, was won. Naruto slept for a week. When he woke, he was in a bed, a real bed, with clean sheets and soft pillows and sunlight streaming through a window. For a moment, he thought he was home, in his own room in Konoha, and the last 5 years had been a terrible dream. Then he saw the crystal on his chest, its light dim and steady, and he remembered. He sat up slowly, his body aching in ways he hadn't felt since he was a child. Every muscle screamed. Every bone seemed to groan. But he was alive. That was something. Elara was the first to visit. She burst into the room, her face wet with tears, and threw herself at him, hugging him so tightly he thought his ribs might crack. He hugged her back, just as tightly. You're awake! She sobbed. You're awake! We were so scared. The medics said you might never wake up. They said your vital signs were all wrong. They said. I'm okay, he interrupted, stroking her hair. I'm okay. I just needed a nap. She laughed through her tears and hit him on the shoulder. Don't do that again. Don't ever do that again. He smiled. I'll try. Kalen came next, looking older than Naruto had ever seen him. The sergeant's cybernetic arm was gone, replaced by a crude stump wrapped in bandages. He walked with a limp, and his face was a road map of new scars. Lost the arm, he said by way of greeting. Took a demon's claw right through the elbow. The medic said it was too corrupted to save. He shrugged. Ah well. It was getting old anyway. He looked at Naruto, and for a moment, his gruff facade cracked. You did it, kid! You actually did it! You saved us all! Naruto shook his head. We did it. All of us. I couldn't have done it alone. Kalen snorted. Don't get all humble on me now. It's unbecoming. He sat down heavily in a chair by the bed. The settlement's a mess. Half the buildings are damaged. A lot of people died. But the ones who survived, they're different now. They're not afraid anymore. Not of anything. He looked at Naruto with something like wonder. You gave them that. Captain Severus arrived that evening, his massive form filling the doorway. He stood at attention, his helmet under his arm, and looked at Naruto with an expression that was difficult to read. You have done the impossible, he said quietly. You have closed a warp rift. You have destroyed demons permanently. You have proven that hope is not just a word, but a weapon. He paused. Lord Gilliman has been informed. He wishes to convey his gratitude. And his respect. Naruto nodded, too tired to feel much of anything. Tell him thanks. But I'm not done yet. Severus raised an eyebrow. Not done? Naruto touched the crystal at his chest. 3 demons pulsed within, their struggles subdued but not extinguished. There are more out there. More cults, more demons, more suffering. I can't fix it all. I know that. But I can try. One world at a time. One person at a time. Severus was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. The Ultramarines will support you. As much as we are able. You have earned that right. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. There is something else. The people of New Konoha, they have begun to build something. A monument. To you. He looked back, his ancient eyes gleaming. They call it the Guardian Spire. It will be visible from anywhere on the planet. A reminder that even in the darkest times, there is light. Naruto didn't know what to say. He had never wanted monuments or statues. He had never wanted to be worshipped. He just wanted to help people. But maybe in this galaxy, that was enough. 5 years became 10. 10 became 20. New Konoha grew into a city, then a small nation. Its people spread across Viridia Secundus, building farms and towns and schools. They traded with other worlds, sharing their knowledge of community and cooperation. They trained their own defenders, warriors who fought not for glory or duty, but for love of their home and each other. Naruto grew older. His hair, once bright blonde, was streaked with gray. His face, once young and eager, was lined with age and experience. But his eyes still burned with that same stubborn fire. And his chakra, though diminished, still glowed with that same golden light. He traveled often, leaving Elara, now a woman of 30, with children of her own, in charge of New Konoha. He visited worlds ravaged by chaos, offering hope to the hopeless. He fought alongside the Ultramarines, his sealing arts proving invaluable against demonic threats. He met with Lord Gilliman several more times, their conversations ranging from philosophy to strategy to the nature of hope itself. And every night before he slept, he touched the crystal at his chest. 3 demons pulsed within, their struggles a constant reminder of the darkness he carried. They were his burden, his penance, his power. And he accepted them. One evening, decades after his arrival in this galaxy, Naruto sat on the balcony of the Guardian Spire, watching the sun set over New Konoha. The city below was beautiful, lights twinkling in the twilight, the sounds of laughter and music drifting up on the warm breeze. It was everything he had hoped for, everything he had fought for. Kalen sat beside him, ancient now, his body failing but his spirit as fierce as ever. He had outlived every expectation, surviving on sheer stubbornness and the best medical care Naruto could provide. He was the last of the original Underhivers, the last link to that first, desperate year. You're thinking about home again, Kalen said, his voice a rasping whisper. Naruto nodded. Every day. I wonder what happened to them. If they're okay. If they miss me. Kalen was silent for a moment. Then he said, I never asked? Your world. What was it like? Naruto smiled, memories flooding back. It was beautiful. Green fields, blue skies, forests full of life. There were mountains and rivers and oceans. And the people were amazing. They were my family. My friends. They believed in me when no one else did. He paused, his voice catching. I miss them. Every single day. Kalen nodded slowly. I know the feeling. I miss my wife. Died 50 years ago, in a cult attack. I miss my son. Died fighting orcs on some godforsaken world I can't even remember the name of. He looked at Naruto. But I don't regret staying here. With you. With them. He gestured to the city below. This is my home now. These are my people. Naruto looked at him, surprised. In all their years together, Kalen had never spoken so openly about his past. The old man smiled, a rare sight. What? You think you're the only one who can change? I was a bitter, cynical old soldier when I met you. I believed in nothing but survival. And you showed me there was more. You showed all of us there was more. He reached out and gripped Naruto's shoulder with his remaining hand. You gave us hope, kid. Don't ever forget that. They sat in silence, watching the stars emerge. Somewhere out there, the Imperium fought its endless war. Somewhere out there, chaos plotted and schemed. Somewhere out there, the darkness pressed in from all sides. But here on this small world, in this small city, there was light. The years passed. Kalen died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by friends and family. Alara became the leader of New Konoha, her wisdom and compassion guiding the city through its next chapter. Her children grew up hearing stories of the Golden Guardian, of the man who had come from another world and taught them how to hope. Naruto continued his work. He traveled less as he grew older, his body finally beginning to fail. But he never stopped fighting. He trained new generations of defenders, teaching them the basics of chakra control, the art of sealing, the importance of community. He counseled the troubled, comforted the grieving, and celebrated every victory, no matter how small. And every night, he sat on the balcony of the Guardian's spire, touched the crystal at his chest, and watched the lights of his city twinkle in the darkness. One night, as he sat there, a familiar presence appeared beside him. Captain Severus, ancient now even by Space Marine standards, his armor scarred by centuries of battle, stood at attention. "The demons," he said quietly. "They grow quiet." Naruto nodded. "They're weakening. I think they're finally dying. Not soon. Maybe not in my lifetime. But eventually. The hope of this world is killing them." Severus was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Lord Gilliman wishes me to convey a message. He says that you have done more for the Imperium than 1,000 crusades. He says that you have reminded us what we are fighting for. He says..." Severus paused, his voice catching slightly. "He says that you are the best of us." Naruto looked up at the stars, at the infinite darkness of the galaxy. He thought of his friends, his family, his world. He thought of all he had lost, and all he had gained. "Tell him thanks," he said softly. "And tell him to keep fighting. Never give up. That's the only way to win." Severus nodded and was gone, melting back into the shadows. Naruto sat alone, watching the stars. The crystal at his chest pulsed faintly, its light steady and warm. The city below hummed with life, with hope, with love. He was an old man now, in a galaxy that had no place for old men. He was far from home, far from everyone he had ever loved. He carried the weight of demons in his chest and the memories of 1,000 battles in his heart. But he was not sad. He was not afraid. Because he had done what he had set out to do. He had protected the innocent. He had given hope to the hopeless. He had built something that would outlast him, something that would carry his light forward into the endless darkness. He smiled, and his chakra flared one last time, a gentle, golden glow that spread across the city, across the world, across the night. The Golden Guardian. It was enough.